Hello internet, I am your friend Nyaneshwar and today I am again here with another Angular topic. So if you want to create a website which can navigate you to a different pages or the different content, then you need to learn the Angular routing. Since you know that Angular is a single page application, everything whatever you write is basically embedded into a single page. But though you have a requirement that you have to perform a navigation based on some user events, user actions on a UI, theoretical things, but also show you a practical things so that you can learn them and you can apply them in your job and you can create a amazing looking front-end website. So this is the typical scenario of the routing. As you can see, I have an application in that I have multiple routes like a home, about, products and contacts, and inside the products also I have a product details. So as a user, my intention here is that if I choose that user flow, I want to go to a products page or the product section. If I click on it or if I select it, I should see the details of it. So how does the Angular manages these things behind the scene? So for that, Angular uses a concept known as routes. So as you can see here, routing is the main part of an Angular platform. It allows developer to build a single page application with a multiple views and allows navigating between the views. So what it says that you can have multiple views. It is not referring to a pages. Remember that Angular is a single page application. It is referring to the views. So whatever you write in your component, it is considered as a single standalone view. So you can navigate between those views, and to achieve that, you need to have these three important pillars of your routing implemented in your project. So first is router outlet, second is routes and the path, and third is a navigation. So let's try to understand each of them. Router outlet is a directive that is available in the @Angular router package, and it is used by a router to mark where in a template a match component should be inserted. So it basically tells Angular that whatever route that is match or whatever in your page where it should go. So router outlet, it is like a placeholder where at a runtime you will decide whatever route which is match or the navigation and the target content of that navigation that you want to show. This should be placed inside which section of the page. So if you put this router outlet on a specific location in your template, in that location at runtime, if you inspect your code, you can see that your generated code, which is a result of your navigation, will be appearing there. Second concept, routes and path. The path mentioned in the part of the URL determines the unique view that can be displayed and refer to the Angular component that needs to be associated with the path. So this path acts as a trigger point, and it tells Angular that if a particular path is matched, then what action it needs to check. So depending on what path is there, in order to Angular to decide that which component to show inside a router outlet, it need to have some information, and the responsibility to provide that information lies to a path. So you need to define this path object in your routers array, and there you can see you have to provide the two elements there. Basically, first is your path, which will be present in your URL of the browser, and the second is a component. Component refers to what is a view that you want to show inside your router outlet tag. And the third one, and it is the most important. So now we learned that where the content is going to be. Second was how the content is going to be, and third, how we are going to trigger that content when it wanted to be. So if you want to navigate between the routes, the router link is a directive that you have to put in your tag, and it decides that if you are using any route where that action should lead you to. So it's basically like an href. If you know the concept of JavaScript and the HTML, it will act as a similar, where if in your href you provide a link and it will take you to that intended resource. Router link does the similar job here. It's not that only a router link will navigate you to a particular path. There is another option which is part of your router component from the Angular core. There you have a method namely router.navigate. You can use that method as well, and it will perform the same job to navigate you there. As you can see in this example, I have three list elements, and on the click of those list element, I have the router link directive, and that are again a part of a anchor tag. And whenever I will click on it, then it will decide that where I want to, which content I want to put inside this router outlet. Now done with the theory, I want to take you to my VS Code. First thing that you need to ensure whenever you are creating a new Angular application, you have to enable Angular routing. So if you are creating a new application, at first it will ask that do you want to create Angular routing or not. So make sure you enter yes there, so that Angular knows that you want a Angular routing enabled for this application by default. I'll select the SCSS or CSS, whatever I want here. So as a result of our routing enablement, you can see that there is a file namely app-routing.modules is created, and there you have an array namely routes. So this array is going to play a vital role in deciding the relationship between the URL path and the view that we want to render. Next thing I want to do is I want to create a 3 views, 3 components. So I will right click on my folder and will generate a component. I will do similarly for view 2 and view 3. View 1, I can see that I have all my 3 components added. Now next thing I will do is to add the path for those views in my app routing module, and I want to also add router outlet. I am in my app routing.module file, and next thing I want to do is the views that I created in the previous steps, 3 views I created using the 3 components. I want to put them in my routing file in my routes array. So first thing I will import them from their respective files. Then I want to add the entries in the routes array as a path and the component which they are referring to. Then I want to import the routers module and want to define that for routes I want to inject this route, so that application knows that if there is this route match, it has to go to this routes array and check for this component to render the respective view. So in this scenario, I want to put those routes in my landing page, and my landing page here is at component.html. That is actually a root level component in every Angular application. So for sake of this example, I want to put my navigation bar or the menu bar that I am just writing, that I want to put that in my app component HTML. So I will put a navigation code there, HTML snippet, and inside that you can see that I have 3 anchor tags which are pointing to the router link, which are view 1, view 2, view 3. Make sure that these links that you have provided, this slash and the strings, it exactly matches what you have defined in your path array in the routes of your app routing module file. After adding this navigation snippet, I will add router outlet, and remember, as I was talking, this router outlet act as a placeholder, and all the code that is generated by the navigation result of this router link, that is going to get placed under this router outlet. Okay, I think with that we are ready with the basic bare minimum things required for routing to work. I will take you to the browser and let's see how is the result. So I can see that I have 3 hyperlinks, view 1, view 2 and view 3. If I click on view 1, it's showing me a view 1 works, then view 2 works, view 3 on a click of it. So that means I can also see the change in my URL. So that means my routing is working perfectly. I want to make this look little stylish, and for that I will add few CSS. So let's add few CSS to make our page look more colorful. So first I will add a class namely container in a division, and I want to put my router outlet inside it. So I have created a container for that. Then I will go to my view and I will add a class to each of those boxes. I want to make them appear in the boxes, so I will add a class namely box to each of this view of the component. Similarly for the view 2 and the view 3. I'll come to my style.css. There I want to define the CSS, the color that I want to use for the nav bar, and I want to show a simple box where my view of each component will be rendered. So first thing what I will do is I will add a body background to a light blue. Then I will add CSS for my navigation bar. I want to put a background color to something like crimson. I will put that. I want to use a text color white. I want to display a flex so that it adapts to a responsive screens. I have a padding of a 10 pixel, position to be fixed on the top, and the border of 1 pixel solid. Then I will define a anchor tags color to a white, and I want to put a text decoration none when a anchor tag is clicked. Then I will define a containers class CSS. This is the container inside which I have my router outlet put. So I want to make that also responsive. So I have put a display flex, justify content center. I want to show the content of the each views inside of those boxes in a center. Align item center, and I'm calculating the height, which is dynamic, and that I'm calculating in the formula, which is 100 of the viewport height minus 40 pixel. Now the question would be, what is the viewport height? So viewport height is nothing but the height that whenever you open your application in browser, the height that you have in which is visible to you, the part which is visible to you of your web page in your browser, that represents your viewport height. I have put the viewport height 100 minus 40 pixel as a formula to decide the height for my container. Then I want to add a CSS for the boxes that I'm going to show inside a container. For that also I have put a background color to a white, a few basic things like padding and a border, and I want to show a simple animation of the slide, and that animation will be eased in out for the 0.5 seconds. And this is the same logic, the CSS rules for that keyframes of the slide in. I want to transform that, and that will happen for the 0.5 seconds. The transformation will happen on the X scale, that is horizontally from minus 100% to 0%. So this basically will allow me to show and slide in animation for my boxes. There we go. I have all of my CSS defined now. I will change the name of these views to something meaningful so that it will make a sense. So let's take a real world example. On a typical website, you can see that there are multiple routes which are usually like about us page, a contacts page, a login screen. So I will do the same here. Let me replace the view 1 to login. I will rename them quickly from view 1 to a login page, view 2 to contact page, and similarly view 3 to careers page. There we go. Since we have renamed the view names, we have to do that change at 2 more places. So in the nav, I have renamed that from view 1, view 2, view 3 to the login, contacts, and career. And the same change I will do in my app routing module, where instead of view 1, view 2, view 3, I will put the names of the path as login, contacts, career. The component name remains the same, which doesn't matter at the end, but the path should be what you want to show in your browser. In my style.css, I will add few more things. So here in this example, I would also like to add a footer in my web page. So I will add a code for the footer in my app component HTML. It's just a simple footer with one division where I want to show a dummy logo and I want to show a copyright note. So I added that code in my HTML. I want to add the CSS for that. So I will hop into my style.css, will go there. I will add a footer CSS. I want to keep a background color, this text align center, and all other properties which makes it responsive, like the display flex and justify content, put in the space, and other basic properties like the margin and the bottom right space. Similarly for the logo, I will keep its radius to 20 pixel and I will display it in 30 by 30 height and width. For the logo image, I have reduced that to a 50%, and now I will go to my browser and see how it looks. So it's looking better than what I had previously, and the names, as you can see, that they are changed from the view 1, view 2, view 3 to something meaningful, which is login, contacts, and career. The reason why you see that login page is by default loaded because in your routing file I have put if the path is nothing, then you have to go to a /login and then you will come to, that's why it is the reason that it is coming to a view component. And I can see that on the click of this, I can see that action is performing. It is routing me to a different sections in my router outlet here. So on the careers and on the contact, I can say it is changing. Also my footer is there. So as I was talking, I want to quickly show you that in the inspect tools how it happens. So you can see that there is a router outlet, and just below it I can see the content which is decided depending on what selection I'm making. So if I click on the view 3, which is careers, I can see that it has changed. If I click on the login, you can see that dynamically it is changing the content from app 3 to app view 1. It is also important to note that the order that we put here in this routes array, it is very important. If you put something which is very generic, which is matching the multiple path in your routers array, it is going to create a problem to you. That's why it's an ideal practice that you put a path that you want to be checked in at a last. So this is the order which Angular follows. First it will check if the path is matching login or not, then it will go to contact, careers, and the last it will go for the empty. So if I put something like star, which means that I want an anything pattern, whichever pattern is matching, that doesn't matter any text it is present in the URL, I want that to be taken to the login, then this will be evaluated at the end. So it is always a good practice that you put a generic path rules like this at the end, and you put a specific path at the beginning of your routes array, because in some cases if you have many routes defined here, the example is very simple, we are just using one level of routing, but in a real application you are going to have the scenarios where you have a nested routing as well. For example, I go to a contact and then again I have few more routes to follow under contacts or something, 2-3 more pages, or under the login I can have multiple login screens. So it is possible that you are going to have a nested routings. So it is good practice that you put a specific routes at the top and we put more generic or the general routes in the ending. I will try to make this more realistic, and will add a login screen, a dummy contact screen, and a dummy career screen here as well. So I will add a simple login page in my login component. So I just added a form with a 3 input fields in it: text, password, and submit. Similarly, for my view 2, there I want to show a contact us page. So I will add a contact us, and I will add again fields like name, email, message, and a submit button. Similarly, for the view 3, which is my career page, there I would add few job openings that a typical company's website have. So I'll add a header, a footer showing a copyright note, and a division box which will have 3 job postings here with a job title, job description, and I have provided a class of it to sub few designs to this newly added HTML. In the career section I want to show a career card, so this is the CSS for that I have specified here. I will add a header, and for the form that I'm showing in the contact page and the login, I want to show this form in using these CSS rules. I will add few more for the input fields, and I think this should be enough. I go to the browser and I can see that my design has reflected here. On the login page I have a username and the password, simple login screen. On the contact I have a simple form for the name, email, and the message, and the submit enable. On the careers I can see the job titles that I put there along with the job cards that I have. So you can see that the job cards that I put along with the description and the title and the apply now as a simple text there. So this was just a quick example that I wanted to show that how you can leverage the routing feature of the Angular to create an multiple views, and you can decide which view to trigger on the basis of it. I again want to reiterate that remember Angular is a single page application, so what it mean by route is not to navigate you to different pages. It just tells that on the performed action, it can be a click or anything. If you are changing a route, you are changing the URL, any part of a URL, and then you want to decide that which view you want to render on your UI, that you can control with the route. But at the end, it's a single page application code that is rendering. Now I want to explain you how is the workflow happening behind the scenes. So whenever there is a URL match, it's not just a single action or the single step that is happening there. It's not just a match of the URL, but it also checks few other things. So of course URL matching is the first step that you can see in this, the diagram of the routing workflow. After URL is matched, it tells that you have to redirect to that URL. It has to find the which view is responsible for that, which component contains the template, which and the HTML code for that. The third thing it does, and which is very important, it checks the state of that component. So what I mean by state is that it decides whether that particular component is accessible to your user, to your current session or not. So there are two concepts, namely guards and resolvers. I have a different video on it. Maybe you can watch it for more understanding on the guards and resolver. So this acts as an gate authentication or any kind of an guarding mechanism that basically you can put in the front of your component, and this will result boolean value which can be true or false, which will ultimately decide whether to render a particular view or not. And after passing this 3 state, it ultimately goes to a view, and there it activates a view. What it means by activating that, it tells whether to render that particular view on the page or not. So state management is an important concept here, and for managing whether to show particular view or not, guards and resolvers are really important. That they are part of Angular core feature, and they basically can enable you to have the features like authentication or restricting the users from accessing a particular resources, a particular views or the UI part, any information on your website. So this was the example I tried to cover within a less time, and I want to tell you that I have a detailed code of it The source code I have linked in the description below. Thank you for watching.